MotoGP is back in the spotlight after unprecedented pre-race chaos rocked the 2025 Grand Prix of the Americas at COTA in Austin, Texas. Dramatic events involving major confusion over tire selection and bike changes forced DORNA and race direction to undertake a major review of the existing regulations. The result, a surprise rule change, is now officially in effect ahead of the Qatar GP. What kind of rule changes are now officially in effect ahead of the Qatar GP? Let's discuss. The Americas GP was predicted to be a difficult race, especially as the weather in Austin was unpredictable all weekend. The combination of rain and a drying track created a huge challenge for the riders and teams. When pit lane opened 25 minutes before the start of the race, the track was still wet from the earlier rain, but conditions continued to change rapidly. Most riders opted to stick with wet bike settings and tires. But three riders, Brad Binder, Enea Bastianini and AI Ogura, made a bold decision. They immediately switched to slicks, betting that the track would be dry enough for the start of the race. The situation reached its climax when the American national anthem was played, just minutes before the start. Marc Marquez, realizing that a dry strategy might be more appropriate, rushed back to the pit lane to change his bike. This decision had a domino effect, with almost half the grid doing the same, causing panic and chaos on the grid and in the pit lane area. Amidst the chaos, there was also a great deal of confusion about the rules. Marc Marquez's team thought that if he changed his bike after the pit lane had closed, he would have to start from the back of the grid, when in fact he should only receive a ride-through penalty. Many teams and riders did not clearly understand this rule. As a result, race officials decided to red flag and reset the entire grid for safety reasons. Ironically, riders like Binder, Bastianini and Ogura, who had made the right strategic decision from the start, lost the advantage they had already gained. The regulation used at the time was Article 1.187, which had been applied since a similar incident at the 2018 Argentinian GP, where Jack Miller was left alone on pole position because other riders rushed to change bikes. The aim was to prevent such chaos from happening again. However, COTA 2025 proved that the rule was no longer effective. Responding to the controversial incident in Austin, MotoGP race director Mike Webb said that the situation was something that had never happened before. However, the unexpected and complex nature of the incident has prompted the organizers to undertake a thorough review of the current regulations. The goal is nothing less than to simplify and clarify the rules to avoid similar confusion in the future. As a result of this evaluation, MotoGP has now officially introduced significant changes to the regulations ahead of the Qatar Grand Prix. This change specifically affects the rules regarding bike changes prior to the start of the race. Previously, riders who changed bikes after the pit lane had closed were required to start the race from the pit lane or the back of the grid. However, this rule is considered technically and logistically difficult, especially when many riders change bikes in a very short period of time. With the new rule in place for the Qatar GP, riders who change bikes after the pit lane closing time will no longer be required to start from the pit lane or the back of the grid. Instead, they will be allowed to start the race from their original pre-qualifying positions. However, they will be subject to a long lap penalty to be served during the race. Mike Webb explained that this decision was made after considering the limitations of the organization and infrastructure in responding to a situation where many riders are making last-minute bike changes. Neither the organization nor the infrastructure is prepared to deal with many riders changing bikes at the last minute and starting the race from the back of the grid, he said. He added that with this new rule, the race can still be run fairly and safely without causing chaos on the grid or in the pit lane. Therefore, we have decided that all riders will continue to start from their respective positions and their penalties will be carried out during the race, said Webb. This change is intended to provide clarity and consistency in the application of the rules, and to ensure that similar situations can be dealt with in a more efficient and transparent manner in the future. This change has a significant impact on team strategy. Last-minute decisions to change bike or tire settings are still possible, but will be subject to penalties that directly affect their time on track. In unpredictable weather conditions like those at COTA, such decisions can make the difference between winning and losing. For Marc Marquez, who was at the center of the drama in Austin, this change is a double-edged sword. His courage to make quick decisions can still be an advantage, but now he must consider the risk of losing time due to long lap penalties. Meanwhile, COTA winner Francesco Bagnaia admitted that Ducati's performance was still inconsistent. He even stated that he had already predicted that Marquez would fall due to the unstable control of the GP25. On the other hand, Alex Marquez has been surprising. Although he has yet to win a race this season, he has scored 6 consecutive runner-up finishes and now leads the championship by 1 point over his brother. Alex is also said to be growing in confidence and is not afraid to compete closely with Mark, even being described by his brother as the rider who respects him the least on the track. The race at the Losail International Circuit in Qatar will be both the opening event of the season and an important test for the implementation of the new regulations. With all its unique characteristics, the Qatar GP is expected to be the first measure of whether the new regulations will work as expected, or whether they will cause new controversy. The Losail circuit has a reputation as one of the most challenging circuits, not only because of its technical design, but also because of its location in the middle of the desert. The unpredictable weather conditions, such as extreme temperature changes between day and night, as well as strong gusts of wind that often blow sand onto the track, can create unexpected race scenarios. A similar situation was seen at the last Austin GP, where changing conditions before the race forced teams to think quickly when determining strategies. With the implementation of new rules, especially those related to changes in starting procedures, long lap penalties, and managing dynamic race situations, the Qatar GP will be a real testing ground. If the weather changes drastically or track conditions suddenly become unfriendly before the start, we will see how teams and riders adapt under the pressure of these new rules. Amidst the various issues and debates surrounding the new MotoGP regulations currently being hotly debated, there is some good news for motorcycle racing fans in France. The legendary Le Mans circuit has officially extended its contract to host the MotoGP series until 2031. This agreement marks a long-term commitment between the MotoGP promoters and the local French authorities to continue to bring world-class racing to Western European soil. Known for its iconic racing atmosphere and fanatical fans, Le Mans remains one of the most popular destinations on the MotoGP calendar. The presence of 2 top French riders, Fabio Quartararo and Johann Zarco, is one of the main attractions that continues to captivate the crowds. As well as being a source of national pride, both riders have become symbols of the revival of MotoGP in France in recent years. The public's enthusiasm was clearly reflected at the 2024 event, where the circuit set an extraordinary record with a total of 300,000 spectators over the weekend. This figure clearly demonstrates that the popularity of MotoGP in France is not only stable, but continues to grow significantly. With this extension, MotoGP ensures that Le Mans will remain the main stage for the world's best riders for at least the next 6 seasons. This is good news not only for racing fans in France, but also for the local automotive and tourism industries, which benefit from hosting this international event. This rule change could be the beginning of a new era in MotoGP race management. A more flexible rule, with penalties still in place, could reduce chaos, but also open up new possibilities for speculation in team strategy. Will this rule succeed in quelling the chaos of COTA? Or will it create a new kind of challenge? Write your thoughts.